All right, so thank you for being on our call tonight for February. I know we have so many different ways to plug into our larger team. There's so many different resources, our power hours, everything, but it's nice for us to come together as our team, our smaller, tight-knit team. So thank you for being on live tonight. Just a couple reminders before we get started. Number one, if you are on a Team Cup team, which every single one of you is on a Team Cup team, we all got those promos. So remember about those promos, and if you use them by the 13th, then they will be replenished too, any of those that you use. So keep that in mind. Also, I have been working on organizing different resources and units in our team page. So check that out if you haven't done so, from some of the end of the year calls that were really, really good with those Superstar Diamond calls, all of our team calls, any different like sharing tools and resources. And then I'm starting to do some like little mini trainings. I started out with the Success Club tracker, which I think is just super beneficial for anyone, but also a good place to send new coaches as they're getting started too, to be able to see how to break down that tracker and use it. So make sure you check those out. And then if you have any suggestions as well of like little mini trainings that you would like to see, let me know, because I can do those for us. All right. So we are passing it on to Diana. Diana is one of our diamond leaders on Team Fit and Focus, and she is a school leader, and well, she was a school leader for a good period of time, and now she works with those leaders and teachers. So she has that education background and that teaching background, and she is very familiar with the Enneagram. And I asked her, well, we had a couple options of what she could chat about, and this is what she chose to share with us tonight, as well as a little bit more about herself, her story, and kind of her journey as a coach. So I am going to send it over to you, Diana. You just have to unmute yourself.
And I'm going to share my screen to start as well. So hello, everyone. I really want to thank everybody for hopping on the call today. What I want to do is really just help you to know yourself better, because when you know yourself better as a leader, you can lead your teams in a better way. So where I'm going to first start is, just like Shell said, I'm going to let you know a little bit more about who I am and how I got into coaching. And then from there, I'm going to teach you as much as I know about the Enneagram. So my name is Diana Filo. I have been a coach for, I think, about 5 years now. I am a lifetime diamond, currently at the diamond rank. And I've really decided that over the past couple of weeks, like, this is where I'm going to really go with my business. And that took a long time to happen. And I connected actually to my Enneagram, which I'll explain in a moment. But before that, I really just, how I got into this business, I was an assistant principal, I was an assistant principal. I just want to see more people. So I was an assistant principal first, and I was watching Michelle on Instagram and Facebook. And at the time, Michelle was a teacher, a mom. She was teaching fitness classes. And I was like, if she can do all of this, there's no reason why I can't as well. So I was like, Shell, what are you doing? I did 21-day fix. The first time I completely bombed it. Like, I didn't do anything correctly. Then I read the material, did it the right way, got great results. And then the rest was kind of history. I became a discount coach at first, slowly started picking up as a hobby coach. And then I became a principal. And when I became a principal, I really kind of lost sight of taking care of myself. And I'm just now getting back into the swing of doing that through my new position. It allows me a little bit more freedom. And I've also gotten some time to really think about how my Enneagram supported my strengths and also where it can hold me back in my business. So it's my hope that with this presentation, you are able to do two things. One, better understand your strengths and where your areas for consideration is. I wouldn't even say growth, because you are who you are. And also then for those of you building teams or with your challengers, potentially use this information so you can better understand, motivate, and support them. Sound good? Can I get an amen? Yeah, I got a thumbs up. I'll take it. Okay, so here we go. All right, so the power of the Enneagram. What we're going to be doing in this session is I'm going to be talking about all of the different Enneagram types. Hopefully, throughout this, you'll be able to identify your team types. And then, as a bonus, if you are in a relationship, you can also learn about your husband, your wife, your partner, your kids. There's a lot of great information that can come from this Enneagram. So, what is the Enneagram? Just so you know, I put the website that I got a lot of this information from, because while I am becoming obsessed with the Enneagram, I'm by no means an expert. So I wanted to get the information from the experts, and that's where a lot of these visuals, the information, and the details come from. So EnneagramInstitute.com. You can pay for a more extensive Enneagram test. The one I suggested people looked at was free. And I found that the free ones generally work for what we're kind of trying to do. So the Enneagram is based on, there are 9 personality types that you can see here. These types is basically these 9 distinct personality types, and each number denotes a type, and each one of your personality types has kind of one of these like nicknames, whether it's being the perfectionist, the advisor, the achiever, et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of based on what motivates you. There are also 3 types. So within the 9 parts of the Enneagram and the 9 distinctions, 3 of them are where you are really coming from the heart and making decisions from the heart. 3 of them are coming from the head, and you're making decisions with logic in your mind. And then another 3 are based on your gut. So I'm going to start with the head because I know where that one is. The head is 5, 6, and 7. The gut is 8, 9, and 1. And the heart is 2, 3, and 4. And where those dominant emotion center comes from is divided here as well. So if you're generally coming from the heart, you may experience a lot of shame. If you are coming from the head, there's more fear because you're thinking a lot. And if you're coming from the gut, often you might feel like you have anger or some rage. It's the dominant emotion. By no means is it the only emotion you're going to express, but it's something that your default emotion may be coming from. So what I'm going to do now is go through every type. We're going to do a very quick and breezy way of just thinking about what is the actual type that you are, what motivates you, who you can identify with in famous words and famous people, and also thinking about like what makes you really strong and what makes you need to consider where your thoughts might be coming from. One thing I noticed when people were doing the pre-work, there were a lot of questions about, I got a 2 and a 3, or I got 2 and a 6. What does that mean? You have one dominant, you have one Enneagram type. Just because one type was your top percentage might not necessarily mean that it is your Enneagram type. So for example, I score, usually my top is 2, 6, and 3. If any of you know me, that makes complete sense. However, the way I figured out that I'm actually a 6 is because of where my fears come in, which is from being like a security side. So once I get to my 6, I'll explain that. So if you are not sure where you fall, really just go to the fear aspect of the Enneagram, because what that will show you is really where those motivations come from and where those fears come from. So let me just pause for a second. I wanted to hear if anybody had any questions before I dive into each type. just looked at the chats. I don't see anything there. Does anybody have any questions? All right, I'm looking at everybody. You're all so beautiful and sexy and smart. Let's keep going then.
I'll keep an eye on the chat for you, Diana.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So an Enneagram 1. If you're an Enneagram 1, your key emotion, your key motivation is you want to be right. You want to make things better. You want to be really justice oriented. And your basic fear is one of this, like, of ever being considered corrupt, evil, or defective. So this one is known as the reformer. Your main core desire is to be good, to have strong integrity, and to be balanced. You are in good company if you're an Enneagram 1. Kate Middleton, Jimmy Carter, Michelle Obama are all considered Enneagram 1s. So on the stronger end of an Enneagram, these people are really one that are going to stand up for themselves and really stand up for their ideals. But at the same time, they can seem inflexible because they're so firm in their beliefs. An Enneagram 2, all an Enneagram 2 wants is to feel loved. That's their basic desire, and they're considered the helper. What their biggest fear is really to be considered unworthy of being loved or unwanted. And so the way in which they often operate in the world is coming from a place of care and support. So they're often reaching out to others so that they can help out and be appreciated. And it's often hard for a helper to receive help because they want so badly to be loved and to reach out and give to others. Examples of this: Mary Kay Ash, who was the founder of Mary Kay Cosmetics, Richard Simmons, and Bishop Desmond Tutu. So I hope that with those, I picked those 3 different folks to give you such a different variety of what an Enneagram 2 can look like in life. Yes, can be really bubbly and helping and reaching out to everybody, but at the same time could also really want to help all women through what Mary Kay did with her cosmetic line. So it's a variety of ways that the helper can manifest itself. But again, that core desire is really to just be loved. The achiever, Amy, where you at, girl? The achiever's biggest fear is to be worthless, and their basic desire is to feel valuable or worthwhile. So an Enneagram's 3 nickname is the achiever. They want to be affirmed, they want to be distinguished from others, they want to have attention and be admired and to impress others. And you could see where the examples come into play. I thought these were 3 beautiful ways to think about an Enneagram 3. Lee's Rachel Berry, right? She was driven, she was motivated, she was going to get what she wanted no matter what the cost. Tiger Woods is an Enneagram 3, as well as Lady Gaga. The one I didn't include, but I thought about including, was Lance Armstrong, also an Enneagram 3, but I think he is where you can see an Enneagram 3 go to what is more of a dysfunctional side of the Enneagram 3, where you can take that need to distinguish yourself into a corrupt zone. So that's kind of where they can veer off. Every single one of the Enneagrams has more functional sides, all the way down to what they are called like dysfunctional sides. So you can see where you are at your best and then what could happen if you're at your worst in each type. The 4s, I actually don't know many 4s in my life, which makes a lot of sense, I think, because of where I work. It's a charter education network. There are a lot of people who are rule followers and justice oriented, where these folks really need to stand out. They have a fear of being insignificant. They really want to make sure that they create their own identity and that they are able to express themselves and surround themselves with beauty. So some folks that were Enneagram 4s include Edgar Allan Poe, Joni Mitchell, and Frida Kahlo. Um, and those are all folks that when you think they're artistic, they are creative, they bring a lot of that vibe to the world. Um, but their biggest concern is that they don't stand out, and that can be where they start to default, and you'll see some more of the withdrawing to protect like their self-image or to maintain certain moods and not really getting tapped into beyond the image they want to put out there. Fives. The investigator, my boss, is actually a 5, and it's really interesting to watch her work. She's brilliant, and what is her main motivator in all Enneagrams 5 is they never want to feel useless, helpless, or incapable. So they need to have all of the information so they can be capable and competent. That is the way they defend themselves from threats. It's like learn more, learn more, learn more. And they're very deep in that way and can get lost in their own thoughts. So my boss has like amazing ideas. She's in her brain, but sometimes you need to like get her moving to an end because she's so in the learning stage. And when we have conversations, I know I have to provide her a lot of information so she can make some of those bigger decisions. But she needs to know everything before she does that. I found it very interesting that Vincent van Gogh, Emily Dickinson, and Kurt Cobain are all different Enneagram 5s. And I think that kind of does go to the head element, like they're very in their head. And that's where a lot of their driving motivations come from. Now my Enneagram. Thank you very much. What I'm going to do here is explain my Enneagram, but then also how I realize it fits in with my business. So hopefully you can do the same. So Enneagram 6 for the loyalists. All I want in life is to feel secure and supported, and that I have this reassurance that everything's going to be okay. Where I am very helpful is I have thought through all of the different emergencies that could potentially happen and planned for how to avoid those. I'm a very loyal person, so if I'm on your side, I will be a ride or die. Sometimes to a fault. Like sometimes I don't always see the signs that it's time to cut the cord with someone, because I do want to feel supported by others. So what I was learning when I was thinking about my business is that as someone who seeks security, jumping headfirst into this business is scary. And it's something that no matter how many times Michelle and I spoke, like I needed to make that decision because my basic fear is that I don't have that support and that security that ultimately to take a dive into this business, you're not going to have. And so I think it took me getting to the point of realizing that and taking like baby step leaps that I've realized, I actually don't need to think about what my insurance is going to be if I ever retire like from my job and become a like elite coach, because I'm not there yet, right? But that's where I was worried. My brain was already going there. So I was stopping myself before I even had a chance to succeed. Another beautiful Diana, Princess of Wales, is a 6. So is Ellen DeGeneres and Malcolm X. 7. Sevens are such a good time because they don't want to be deprived or in pain. So they need to be constantly fulfilled, and they want to take their freedom and be like have this happiness, and avoid missing out on really wonderful experiences. That being said, I think a misconception about a 7 is that they're always cheery and always fun all of the time, which is just not true. None of us are only one thing, which is an Enneagram, I think, something to always be thinking about. You're not just one thing. There are so many deeper layers of the Enneagram. This is very surface. But if you start listening to more podcasts and reading more, you can get more and more layered about how your Enneagram shows up for you. 3 famous 7s include Britney Spears, Goldie Hawn, and Elton John. And if those aren't some 3 party people, I don't know who is. That would be a really fun space. Everybody needs some eights in their life. The challenger. An eight wants to protect themselves and be in control of their life and their destiny. They have a basic harm of being controlled by others, so they are seeking self reliance. They want to stay in control of the situation, and they want to be more dominant in the environment that they're in. So, where a challenger can really help out in a job or on a team is that they will um, if they have something that they're questioning, they're not going to hesitate to let you know. And they're not going to back down until they completely understand the why behind something and feel that they're bought into that. 3 different Enneagrams include Toni Morrison, Donald Trump, Barbara Walters. And when you think of those folks, they have very firm beliefs and they are who they are and they're unapologetically who they are. And that I think is what's one of the beautiful things about eights. Last but not least, the Enneagram 9, the peacemaker. When you think of the peacemaker, it's exactly what you are assuming. Their basic desire is to have inner stability and peace of mind, so they avoid conflict and tension, and they really resist whatever would upset or disturb them. So, for example, if you have an Enneagram 9 on your team or in your life in some way, they might not want to have a head-to-head conversation about any sort of conflict because they really want to create harmony in their lives. So with that, if it's a partner or someone you're working with, you would really need to think about how do I have this conversation with them in a non-confrontational way so that we can come to a conclusion or come to an end or a compromise in a safe space. 3 lovely examples include Walt Disney, Jimmy Stewart, my main man, and Morgan Freeman. So those are all of the different Enneagrams. I mentioned a little bit earlier that yes, there are blanket statements that are made about each Enneagram, but there are so many layers that make each Enneagram more defined and more in depth, including different subtypes, where you go in times of stress. There are healthy and unhealthy layers of each personality type. So, for instance, my most unhealthy version of my Enneagram type is literally said, um, oh, most likely to become an alcoholic, like out of all of the Enneagrams, and be found on Skid Row is what it said. So the unhealthy version of each Enneagram is so insanely extreme, but it's good to know that they all vary. I think again, the other example being like an Armstrong, where that 3 can be so helpful in life until it becomes unhealthy, and then you'll do whatever it takes to achieve, and that's where you need to worry about that unhealthy layer. I'm talking a lot about the Enneagram at work, and you should never use your Enneagram as an excuse or just default to, well, I'm an Enneagram such and such, so I don't know how to do that. That's not the case. You can learn anything, you can be anything, you can do anything. You just need to understand where your motivations and fears and desires come from. I included this little Disney princess thing because now that you know about the Enneagram, you're going to follow all of the Enneagram sites and probably start to laugh when you see some of the correlations. So, for example, like Elsa is a prime connect with me, which is probably why I didn't like Frozen 1 so much, because I saw myself so much in that single older sister character type. But if you think about Elsa, she's very loyal. She does want to be supported, but she tested the ones she's loved to prove that they loved her. And that's an Enneagram 6 if I ever heard of one. I know if this is something that's getting you interested, there are some wonderful resources that you can learn about yourself. And so I actually have the Wisdom of the Enneagram. Each Enneagram type has this Enneagram collection by Beth McCord. It is a more Christian-based book, so it's connecting how your Enneagram type also can connect to how you operate in the world and in your faith. The Complete Enneagram is not a book that I have actually read, but I've heard wonderful things about. It was recommended on the Liturgist podcast. And that podcast has 3 separate episodes that chunk the head, the heart, and the gut. I would recommend you listen to all of them because they're just so fascinating, and it goes one layer deeper than I did today. And it also can help you understand the people around you a little bit better. Start with the gut one, episode 17, and go forth from there. And for fun, I included some of my favorite Enneagram Instagram accounts right here. Like I said, once you start fiddling with the Enneagram and following some of these things, it's really hilarious. Both Lisa and Amy send me Enneagrams that match mine or theirs pretty regularly on my Instagram DMs, and it's hilarious because it really does fit them. For example, mine, slaying the role of best man or maid of honor at a wedding, couldn't be more true. If you're going to have me as your maid of honor, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to make sure your day is amazing. So yeah, that is kind of some things I have learned about the Enneagram, how I've applied it to my life, both in work, business, and with those I love. And I think it's something that's just really helpful when you know yourself a little bit more. It helps your leadership in so many ways. I've done this with a lot of my assistant principals and my own team. And again, it just helps us to understand each other better. So what questions might people have?
Do you want to unshare so we can see everyone?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. I love this. Thank you. This was awesome. I think it's so helpful to have coaches on our team do it, and new coaches that join us, and also even like our challengers to understand how to work with our challengers more.
Yeah. And their motivations. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I bumped up so if you didn't, a lot of you did already take it, but I bumped up the test to make sure that people saw it, that you posted as the pre-work. I appreciate you posting that, for you to actually discover your Enneagram. Although sometimes when you went through that, you probably had a good idea of which one you are. So here's a quick question for you. So yeah, when I tested, it was the first time I ever saw 1 in my answer or in my results, but I had 1, 2, and 3, like all like 98% and 97%.
Yeah.
So, and I know you mentioned where you identify with the fears. Yeah. So what if you identify in more than one fear?
Talk to me a little bit more about where you're coming from there.
Because I think I identify with fears with 2 and 3. And that's kind of where I've always thought I was, more so those 2. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I'm pulled more, like one more than the other. You know what I mean?
Yep. So what will be interesting, I can help you, I think, a lot. It's probably going to be a longer conversation than what we could do here. But the 9, I would think about like where your default, when that fear comes up, do you go more towards pride or deceit if you're feeling challenged? So if you're an Enneagram 2, you won't acknowledge your own suffering, and you will ignore your own needs because you're attempting to help others so much. But if you are a 3, if you are believing that people are outdoing you, the ego gets so strong that you would likely use deceit to really try to defend yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's where I would consider, like, are you one that is going to say, no, I'm good, I'm fine, how can I help you? Or are you more likely to do whatever it takes to achieve? Yeah, that's what I was going to say for you, but I didn't want to. I wanted you to come to your own conclusion. And so we all have, what you'll find if you listen to that podcast, where you sit, you also will bend one way or the other in your subtype. So technically I'm a 6, and under some certain stress in certain situations, I bend towards a 5. which makes a lot of sense. And so it would be really logical to me if you are already a 2 that you can bend towards the 3 a little bit as a subtype. And that's a whole nother category of deliciousness with the Enneagram that I'm just starting to get into. But that's also why you can meet 2 type 2s and they're so different because they might lean one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Because I know some others were like getting multiple.
Yeah, I also got multiple.
Numbers.
Technically, the 2 came up higher for me on one test than the 6, but when I go through the fears, like 100%, and if you know me, I'm seeing some nods, like I'm a 6, like I'm loyal and I fear like not being loved, liked, etc., etc.
Yeah, I love this. Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions? No questions?
Feel free to slide into those DMs if you have any questions about the Enneagram. Again, I'm obsessed. So if you want to learn more, I'm happy to dive in it with you. But I really hope that you can take away some nugget, whether that's with challengers, your team, your partner tonight. Like,
yeah, I would love to even brainstorm ideas of how we could utilize this more with like new coaches on our team and, you know, to help them get started with their business according to their Enneagram. So I would love to like dive into that with you at some point.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Heather, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's not a question, but I was just going to say, one of the things that, like, since I first figured out my Enneagram, which is a while ago now, but I'm a 9, like, through, I'm a 9. So hearing no is insane for me. Like, to me, and I think Heidi, is maybe a 9 also. Hearing no feels huge. Like any small conflict, even if it's if you ask somebody something and they say no, feels like life-alteringly terrible. It feels like so much conflict, like, and you're like, well, I don't want to get in a fight with this person about it. But once you realize that that's just your personality, you can start to work past it. You're like, okay, you're just feeling this, but really, it's not a big deal. So I think finding out that sort of information from new coaches or from challengers is huge.
Oh my God, what's it like when you invite and people say no?
Well, right. That's what I was thinking about. Yeah. But you can recognize that. And I like that, like Diana mentioned, like that can't be your excuse. Well, I'm a 9. I can't hear no. Like I can't invite. Like now you know that you need to work through that and take actions to work through that.
Yeah. I have legitimately worried about if I quit my job to do this full time, what will my insurance be? Why am I worrying about that already? Like, I'm nowhere
who you are.
That was a concern of mine.
I remember on one of the Q&As, I asked you that, Michelle, riding in the car.
Are you
in the car when I was on a Q&A, and I said, what do you do about health insurance?
Yeah, well, it's not provided like a teaching job or whatever. Yeah.
But that, like, why was that? What was, you know, I mean,
you're an adult.
Of like, well, true, but if my fear and my desire comes from my security, that's what I'm thinking about, as opposed to somebody else might be thinking about, well, I can't have all of those no's because I fear the conflict, right? But anyway, so just understanding it is very helpful to think about, oh, I don't even need to worry about that yet. Like, I'm not even
You
close.
should just move to Canada and then you don't have to worry about health insurance.
Girl, let's see how the next election goes, and I might be living in your basement.
No.
So many.
I'm just gonna nix that.
I didn't say which way I was voting, but you all know.
So I think
right, well-
after I learned mine, like, so my biggest fear that holds me back is when I started doing this, like, Heather, remember we did that challenge and we won and we crushed it, but all I did was focus on this and everything else went to the wayside. And that, like, I think, like, now that I've worked so hard to like pull our life together and like pay attention to our life, like do those things, like I know that I put everybody else first, and that my biggest fear is that I'm just gonna like fall right back into that. But then I catch myself and like I know that now I have systems and routines and people in place that will call me out if I'm doing that, and also when I am holding myself back. So
right, you have the ability to succeed in this business with keeping your priorities straight too, and
right.
keeping those boundaries.
And it's a business where you literally have to take care of yourself to run your business.
Yep.
So yeah, but that speaks to like knowing yourself, but also knowing your team and knowing your people and knowing when they can call you out on your shit, to speak freely.
Right. Well, that's awesome that has helped so much for you, identifying with your personality type and just identifying where you were succeeding with the business, but that's not a sustainable way to succeed with the business, to give up everything else and put your priorities, not have your priorities straight. You know, that's not the way to run this business at all. So you don't want to get in that trap.
Sure don't.
All right. If anyone wants to just DM me, I'm happy to talk about this more. I appreciate everybody hopping on tonight.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Have a good night.